Thank you, Siobhan. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome here this afternoon for Cyber 101 for small charities. Siobhan says, my name is Alison Stone. I'm the Cyber Resilience Coordinator at SCVO. This is our last session after an incredibly busy week of Cyber Scotland Week. It's been a fantastic week. As I mentioned, we're beginning to see some familiar faces on these sessions, and it's lovely that you've joined us either all week or just here today. We've got an hour or so to talk about what small charities need to know about cyber resilience. We've got some great speakers lined up. I've worked out on Friday that I'm actually really rubbish at reading out bios. So I'm going to hand over to every speaker here and they're going to introduce themselves. I'm going to go to James first. James.
Thank you very much, Alison. My name's James McGoldrick. I am a detective constable with Police Scotland working in the cybercrime unit in Glasgow. My day-to-day job involves providing technical support, advice and assistance to a variety of Police Scotland's investigation and inquiry teams, and as a result of that I get to see on a daily basis the types of problems and challenges that are facing organisations in Scotland, and I will hopefully be speaking to you about some of them in a few minutes. So thank you.
That's fab. I'll go to Mike now.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Mike Smith from the Cybercrime Harm Prevention team at Police Scotland. And as I said, cybercrime harm prevention is essentially crime prevention, but with a cyber angle. So we take some of the jobs, we look at them, and we try and make them into everyday speak in the way that you would understand things a bit more. And I'm going to be covering a few points just in relation to a kind of crossover between advice for when you're at home and then a kind of crossover into the workspace. We also have the portfolio for keeping the young people safe and internet safety. So it's a lot of crossover in relation to internet safety and cyber security.
So you guys are doing a much better job than me. Kirstie, your shot.
Hi everyone. I'm Kirstie. I'm the Cyber Resilience Community Lead at the Scottish Business Resilience Centre. So SBRC for short is a non-profit organisation where we help organisations with all sorts of business resilience matters and any potential threats both on and offline. And my role is to aim to support organisations to improve their cyber resilience. And I do lots of different capacity building and engagement activities. So I'll share some great resources with you today.
That's fab. Thank you very much. So you're being treated to the A team this afternoon. Without further ado, I'm going to ask James to put his slides up. I'm going to do my bit and then we'll kick off. Thanks, James.
That should be you now. Is that okay for everyone?
Looks good. Thank you.
Fab.
Right. Next slide, please. I've been dying to say that all week. Fantastic. Right, I'm doing the introduction piece. We're going to talk a little bit about what a cyber attack is, what cybersecurity is, and really what as charitable and voluntary sector organisations you need to know and you need to be aware of. And then the guys and gals will get into a lot more of the technical detail of how you may be being attacked. So to kick off, what is a cyber attack? A cyber attack is when somebody tries to maliciously, and malicious being the key word here, either damage, disrupt, or gain unauthorized access to your systems, either your IT network, your devices. And when we talk about damage, we mean like deleting a database or maybe stealing a copy of it to hold to ransom at a later stage. When we talk about disruption, you may have heard something that is known as a denial of service attack. That's when you have a website that gets hit with lots and lots of traffic in an attempt to overload that and bombard it so the actual website itself collapses. It's a bit like the Boxing Day sales like that used to be at Next when we all used to queue outside and then go hell for leather when the doors opened, only on a more sort of cyber type term. And the other thing is to gain unauthorized access. And that could be, for example, trying to guess your email password or get you to hand over the password in a kind of legitimate looking form so they could repurpose that and try and gain access to other systems that you may use the same username and password combination together for. Next slide, please, James. So what is cybersecurity? Cybersecurity is the other side of the equation, the yin to the yang. And it's the means by which individuals and organizations can reduce the risks of becoming victims of cyber attacks. And the core function of cybersecurity is to protect the devices that we use. And we do. We live and work and breathe online, particularly now when we're working from home during the pandemic. I don't know if you're anything like me, but one of the first things I do after I open my eyes in the morning is lift my smartphone and check my messages, have a look on Facebook, make sure the kids weren't arrested the night before or doing something stupid on Instagram. And we are just so very, very interconnected. So cybersecurity has to become a core function of our interconnected lives. It's really, really important. Because, as I say, we are living and working online. Cybersecurity also has other benefits, though. It can help your organization be that little bit more resilient. If you were to have a flood or a fire, for example, in your offices, having good cyber hygiene practices, running backups, that sort of thing, will help you get out of these sticky situations. So it's good for cyber resilience, but it's also good for a good way of life as well. So next slide, please, James. So this slide it's a little bit out of date now, actually. I think these were 2018 figures. It just demonstrates how much the third sector is actually applicable for these sort of attacks. Looking at the bans for charity incomes, even small organizations with incomes under 100,000, 19% of those organizations reported that they had been attacked in the last 12 months. When you get up to the bigger size organization with charity income over 500,000, over half of those had been attacked. And we're looking at these figures, and I have to tell you now, and I'm sure that the guys will allude to this, there's a huge culture of underreporting in cyber. We don't know the half of what goes on. So these figures are absolutely on the conservative side. So it's a big deal. It's a big deal for the third sector. Looking at the monetary figure down there, £9,470. That's a lot of money. I don't know any organisation, public sector, private sector, third sector, that could swallow that sort of loss quite happily. And that's really just in monetary terms, thinking about the cost of remedial action. What it doesn't look at is the reputational damage that a data breach or a cyber attack, when it's not managed well, could also cause your organisation. So it's serious stuff. It's stuff that we need to be very aware of and take the attitude very much of, it's not if it happens to us, it's when it happens to us. Next slide, please. So why are charities at risk? When I first started doing this, I guess I was maybe a little bit like you guys. Well, we do good stuff. Why would anybody want to attack a third sector organization? You know, our work is for the greater good. But unfortunately, your average cyber criminal doesn't view it like that. To them, you are just another source of personal information, financial information, commercial data, money, because we as organizations have all of that stuff. There is, and I think it's one of the nicest things that I see about the sector, a real culture of trust within the third sector. And if somebody phones you up and says, oh, you do some really fantastic stuff, give me your bank account details, I'd like to give you money, we readily and very quickly hand over those details, a lot more so than any other probably sector would do. So we have a real culture of trust. And we also trust our employees and our volunteers to do the job to which we are employing them or we are engaging with them. And again, that is lovely, but not everybody is a good guy. So we maybe need to apply a little bit of suspicion. There is a real low level of awareness about cyber resilience and the need for cyber resilience within the third sector, particularly in smaller charities. Hopefully this week has addressed some of that. It is getting better, but there is still an awful lot more work needed. We're really aware that you guys are busy delivering services to your service users, and this stuff is probably not in your line of vision on a day-to-day basis, but the back of house stuff is still really important. The other thing that we do see is smaller organizations whose resilience measures are probably not as strong as other organizations that have the budgets to put the good stuff in place, being used as an access route to a bigger fish. If you provide services for a local authority or a private sector corporation, for example, cyber criminals can try and get access to the back end of your system into that bigger organization to get into their data too. So next slide. So who are charities at risk from? Now I'm going to read you a story here. I love this story. Kirstie, you read this story really, really well as well. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the myth of cyber criminals. Thanks to Hollywood, we have a perception of a cyber criminal, and it broadly follows this format. A cyber attacker, he, and it's always a he, is very young, late teens or early 20s. He hacked into his first nuclear missile facility at the age of just 5. At the age of 12, he started on bank heists. He bought his first hoodie with proceeds, and his face has not been seen since. He works alternatively for the Russian, Chinese, Iranian, and North Korean government, and spends his free time in his bedroom in darkness with green letters and numbers on his wallpaper. He's very clever with computers. In fact, he's so clever, he cannot be defeated. Thankfully, for the sake of the world, this is a myth, and certainly so far as the type of person that you're going to be protecting your charity from. Your cyber attacker may be slightly more normal, or ordinary, should I say. By way of a real life example on how easy cybercrime has become, we're going to talk about Carl. Carl was working in a warehouse, earning not much more than minimum wage, when a friend showed him where he could buy lists of email addresses and associated passwords. These had been stolen from various data breaches and were now being sold on for other criminals, cyber criminals, to use. Carl did not have a big fancy IT degree. In fact, by his own admission, he'd never been taught IT. But nevertheless, he began buying these lists off of the internet and entering the email addresses and password combinations into loyalty card websites. Most weren't successful, but when they were, he would convert the victim's loyalty points into vouchers and sell these vouchers for slightly less than face value on legitimate auction websites. After a while, Carl upped his game. He bought a piece of software that would automate a lot of the entering of email addresses and passwords. In the year or so before Carl was arrested for fraud, he made in the region of £150,000 from this simple scam. Now, Carl was not a technical wizard, as Hollywood portrays. He simply exploited one of the most common things that a lot of us do, and that's reusing the same username and passwords on lots of websites, because it's easy to do that. So I like to think of a really, really good example of dispelling the myth and you know, just saying how people can get started on this stuff. So what's it all about? Cyber criminals are motivated by money. That's really their huge motivation. And equally, if it's going to take them a lot of time and effort to break your defenses, it's not going to be worth their while to do that. We like to talk about an analogy of your traditional burglar. If you look at my house and you look at my next door neighbor's house, and my house has got the big barky dog and the burglar alarm and the barbed wire, and you know, it just doesn't look like a very, very friendly place. It looks quite resilient, and my next door neighbor's has none of that stuff. The cyber criminal is going to look at both of our houses and go, "See, Alison's too much like hard work. I'm just going to attack the house next door that doesn't have all that good stuff that's making it more secure." So yeah, there is a sort of cost-benefit analysis for the cyber criminal, and even if you just put a few of the little security measures that James and Mike are going to talk about in place, that may be enough for your cyber criminal to move away from your house and attack your next door neighbors. What else should you be worrying about? Indirect attacks. It may be the case that should you get caught up in a cyber attack, it wasn't aimed at you. You hear an awful lot of this, and a lot of the big attacks that actually get into the media often are there because they have hit an organization, but they weren't actually aiming to hit that organization. The NHS attack that was going around in 2017, 2018, that was apparently an attack by the Russians on somebody in the Ukraine, I believe. But because the NHS were running some similar software, they were hammered by that attack. They were collateral damage, basically. The other thing that we need to worry about is insider attack, and that can be done in one or two ways. You may have a disgruntled ex-employee or somebody who's a little bit grumpy because they're not being treated particularly well. So they could pass on credentials to other people, or they could get malicious software onto your systems or steal data. What tends to happen more so than that is the role of inadvertent insiders. And that's people who have no malicious intent, but they click on that dodgy phishing link, or they put the USB stick into the side of the machine that introduces malware onto your systems. They're not doing that out of badness. They're doing that out of, I'm loath to say miseducation, because certainly these phishing attacks, as James will explain, are incredibly sophisticated. It's maybe just unfortunate. So we do have an issue with inadvertent insiders as well. Other things worth mentioning: hacktivists. These are people who are motivated by a specific cause, personal agenda, political agenda, potentially. Terrorist organizations have been known to deface charity websites, again, if that's against the moral cause for which they are fighting. And nation state attacks, probably don't need to worry too much about those for your organization, but you will read an awful lot about them in the paper when you do read about these big attacks that have hit critical natural infrastructure and that sort of thing. So I think that's me, James. Do I have another slide? Oh, I do have another slide. Oh, it's all surprises here on a Friday, eh? Okay, how a charity is being attacked. Now I'm gonna whiz through this because these guys are going to talk about this stuff a lot more. Ransomware is when a cyber attacker gains access to your system, locks it down so you can't access it. They sometimes take away a copy of your databases or your data as well, and then what they do is contact you and say, look, we have your data, we have your systems locked down. You need to pay us a fee, generally in Bitcoin, and we will release your data back to you. It's called ransomware. It's getting increasingly more prevalent. It's getting increasingly more sophisticated as well. It's rubbish when you see that little screen in front of you. When you've had a ransomware attack, I went for a training course and actually put it onto a system. I knew I was doing it, and I still looked at the screen, and it made me feel a little bit sick, going, oh my gosh, there goes my files. It's good and advised practice, should you ever find yourself in this situation, not to pay the ransom. That is the advice from NCSC and Police Scotland as well. And Kirstie will, at the end, will talk to you a little bit about what we can do in the way of response and recovery should you be subject to this sort of thing. Malware and malware is basically malicious software. Attackers try and get malicious malware onto your system so it can go around the back end of your system and hive off that all important data, so they can take it away and use it at another occasion. Now, phishing, I'm not going to talk about because I know James' talk has got a lot of focus on that. So the last one, fake organizations and websites. This is something that we do see. We see it quite often after a natural disaster, for example, when these fake organization websites pop up to take advantage of our our generosity. I've never been able to say that word. Our generosity when we want to donate to a particular cause. Fake websites appear very, very quickly. You think you're donating to the cause that you're feeling is very important, but it's really cyber criminals who are one step ahead of the game, trying to hive off your money for their own nefarious purposes. So it's something to be very aware of. I do think that's me, James. Yay, it is me. I'm going to hand you over to James. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alison. So as Alison has already suggested or alluded, I'm going to spend quite a bit of time today talking about phishing emails and phishing email campaigns. And the reason that I want to do that will become apparent as I move through this little presentation. So I'm going to try and break it down into sections, if I can get my screen to update. There we go. I'm going to talk very quickly about the history of this type of attack because sadly it has been around for a very long time, and despite the amount of time that it's been around, people are still falling victim to this every single day. It is still causing real harm to individuals, to organisations alike. So I'm going to just highlight that. I'm then going to explain what phishing actually is and why people might want to do it. I'll then move on to what we can do as individuals to identify those fraudulent emails when they come in, and then what we can potentially do about that. I'll touch very quickly on a much more targeted and dangerous form of phishing called spear phishing. I'm not going to spend too much time on that because the chances of smaller organisations and smaller charity groups falling victim to this or being targeted by spear phishing is reduced in comparison to general phishing campaigns. And Alison's already explained part of the reason behind that. It's that cost and return balance for the criminals. They probably don't stand to gain quite as much from smaller organisations and smaller charity groups, and the amount of time and work that is required to conduct a spear phishing campaign can be quite high. So we'll spend a bit less time on that, but I still want to point out what it is and the potential dangers that it can present to you as an individual. I'll then very quickly look a little bit at your online profile, both your charities and also your personal profiles as a member of a charity. Some of you might hold fairly important positions within your charity. You might be a trustee, you might be secretary, treasurer, chairman, and having good online profile hygiene and good kind of social media awareness is also a key part of being resilient online as a charity member. So I'll talk about that very briefly. And finally, one of the other things that I spend a lot of time doing with Police Scotland is child protection and online safety for children and young people. And I want to just advertise very briefly at the end of this presentation a really brilliant set of resources from the National Crime Agency, because a lot of you will work with children and young people. There will be children and young people in your charities, and particularly over the last year or so, we are all spending our time at home. We're all having to communicate online and broadcast our lives online to some extent. And these resources are brilliant for young people, parents, carers, and the children's workforce for giving children the tools that they need to be safe online. So let's move on. In 1996, the vast majority of the internet connected through the America Online platform. Now that provided their access and probably their email accounts as well. And scammers at that point in time would pose as members of AOL's administration team, members of staff, and they would send an email to anyone and everyone that they could reach within the AOL community, pretending to be from the admin team. Your account has been compromised. Please click the following link to validate your account and reset your password. And at that point, people were very trusting on the internet. The concept of maliciousness and people being up to no good on the internet hadn't really taken hold. Lots and lots of people would click the link. They would provide their username, their current password, and as they thought, they would provide a new password. But in actual fact, what was happening was that information was going straight to the hackers, who would take control of their account and use that for other malicious purposes. They might sell it on to other criminals to make money directly, or they might use it in some other malicious way. Now, fairly quickly, AOL as a company became aware of this problem and they took steps to protect their customers from this activity. However, it didn't stop the process. The scammers simply moved on, set up a new scam and started targeting other people. And this is still going on today. This hasn't stopped. And sadly, it hasn't stopped being effective. It is still worthwhile for hackers to employ phishing as a tactic to generate money, to steal information, and to get access to organizations and computer systems. So what is a phishing email? It is an email which appears to be from a legitimate or reputed source, which aims to cause you, the recipient, to either provide information or to click on a link or take some other action, which is going to give the attacker some sort of advantage over you. In other words, it is a sneaky email from a bad guy that's trying to get you to do something that is going to cause you harm, and it's going to give them some sort of benefit or reward. What kind of information then am I talking about? Now, Alison has already discussed some of this, but it could be your bank details, which would allow them to potentially set up credit accounts or take out loans or purchase other financial products in your name. So they get the benefit and you carry the liability for that unwittingly. It might be usernames and passwords. We have heard from Alison again that money is there to be made by selling lists of usernames and passwords. So if I send out 5 million emails to random people and 5,000 of them respond with their usernames and passwords that are current, that might be a list that I could sell on to other people, and they will just use that list as Alison had described earlier. It might actually be credit card information. And if I can get hold of that, I can just go to Amazon and start ordering things in your name. So again, I'm getting the benefit and you're carrying that liability. It could well be other personal information that could be used to build up a picture of you. Maybe you have a relationship with a larger Phish, a bigger organization, a partner that the attacker is actually interested in. And by gathering information about you, they could craft one of these spear-phishing emails that we will come to talk about in a few minutes. So it might just be that they're looking to get more information about you that they can then use for some other malicious purpose later on. Maybe it's not information they're after. Maybe they're trying to convince you to do something. And what kind of things might that be? Well, they may want to just convince you to make a straightforward payment. Maybe they're not wanting to steal your details. They just want to convince you and coerce you into just giving them money. Or they might want you to click the link in the email or open a Word document or a PDF document that has been attached to that email. And when you do that, before you know, you've got that message that Alison was talking about. You're sick to your stomach because all of your files and folders are now encrypted with ransomware, and that's now moving across every other computer in your organization that is connected to yours. So phishing is quite often one of the first routes of entry for a hacker into an organization, and it relies on you doing something, clicking a link, opening a file. So for that reason, you can actually see that being aware of this and doing something about it can be more valuable than the top antivirus software or the best intrusion detection systems, because actually just educating your people and taking a minute or two to stop and think can be one of the best lines of defense right at the front line, right at the front door of your organization, that can stop people from getting a foothold and getting some sort of advantage over you. I'm going to move through this quickly because we've already discussed the reasons behind this. We're looking at money and information which could then be used to make money, are reasons and motives for attackers. It could be to simply cause you reputational damage. If they can get a hold of your social media accounts and they can deface them and put horrible things on them, that could cause damage to your organization. In some cases, perhaps for larger charities or larger organizations, they could be looking to conduct disinformation campaigns or cause other sorts of damage. This is a brief example from the Associated Press in 2013. They lost control of their Twitter account, and as a result of that, for a few moments, that Twitter account started posting for fake news, basically. But at that time, this had a massive impact. And this is one of the tweets that was posted. It said, 2 explosions in the White House, Barack Obama injured. Now that moved across the internet like wildfire, and it caused real harm, not just in the social media community, but it also spread panic in the financial markets. And you can see on that little diagram that I've put online what happened to the stocks and shares on Wall Street within a minute or two of that tweet going online. So this could not only cause reputational harm to your organization, but depending on the presence that you've got on the internet, it could actually cause real financial loss to a large number of people across the world. So it can and does have a big impact. Now, I don't want to be all doom and gloom. How do we spot a phishing email? What can we do as people about it so that we don't become victims of this type of thing? So phishing emails generally rely on us making a poor decision, and we make the worst decisions when we are faced with an emotional response. So the email may well try and trigger some sort of adverse emotional response with us, because that means we're more likely to make a poor choice in the aftermath of that. So you might find that the email will contain a sense of personal loss or a disadvantage to you. It will create a sense of legitimacy or a formal authority. It might come from the security team of your company. It might appear to come from the police or some other law enforcement agency. It will try to put some sort of personal responsibility on you, because that then gets your hackles up. Oh no, it wasn't me. I need to fix this. I need to do something to clear my name, or to clear up this confusion, because I haven't done anything wrong. And there will probably then be some sort of call to action associated with that email, because that's then you're out. You've had bad news, there's a problem, but here's how to fix it. Click this link to sort this problem. And then that might be followed up with a sense of urgency, some sort of time pressure that reduces your ability to just take a breath and think about what's being asked of you, think about what's in front of you. Because if you do that, the chances are you'll spot this email for what it is. Now, sometimes these emails will be a little bit more targeted and a little bit more clever, and they will make reference to ongoing events or current affairs. Now, more recently, we've seen emails circulating pretending to be from your local vaccination centre, saying you need to register and confirm your details before you can get your COVID-19 vaccine. Please click here and fill in the form. And it's asking people for their banking details and other personal information. So that's a current affair or an ongoing situation which is being exploited by criminals just now in phishing email campaigns. So when you get an email and you think it's got some of these hallmarks, there's a sense of pressure or a time pressure on it, don't just jump and act on that right away. The chances are you probably do have some time just to take a breath and think about what you're looking at. Read the email carefully. Quite often, phishing emails and campaigns are poorly put together, and they do contain grammar and spelling mistakes, which can often give the game away. Look at the person's email address who has sent it to you. If you click or hover, sorry, don't click, do not click, hover your mouse over the sender's email or right click on it, and quite often, depending on the program that you're using, you will see the full details of the email address that sent that email to you. And quite often that is different from what is actually printed on the screen, and that can be a giveaway as well. So check the sender's details, who is actually sending this email to you. Now, something to watch out for. We have 4 joeblogs@googlemail.com emails there. 3 of them are legitimate and go back to Joe Blogs. 1 of them doesn't. Now, if you look very closely at the first of those 4, you will see that Google Mail is spelled G-O-0, the number 0, G-O-0-G-L-E-M-A-I-L.com. And that's a common tactic that criminals will use to try and persuade you that a legitimate person is communicating with you. They will make an email account that is very close to someone that you might know or might expect to receive an email from, but it's fundamentally different. So check that address carefully and make sure that they're not playing games like this. If there is a link in an email, check it carefully as well. Hold your mouse over the link for a few seconds, because you'll get a little pop-up and it will show you the actual address that that link will take you to. And quite often it doesn't relate to the organisation or the person who's claiming to send you that email. Here's a quick example. Now, this is a generic example taken from the internet, but as we can see, it has a sense of urgency, security notice, exclamation mark. So we've got our attention right away. It has legitimacy and a formal authority because our security system has detected some irregular activity connected to your account. So there's that personal responsibility. There's some irregular activity and it's on your account. So now you're paying attention, you're panicking. You will be unable to send and receive emails until this has been resolved. So we've got a personal disadvantage as well. But there's good news, because we can click here to validate now, and that will sort all of our problems. And then a time pressure. To prevent further irregular activity, we will restrict access to your account within 72 hours. So here's all the hallmarks that we were talking about of the classic phishing email. Formal authority, some sort of personal loss or disadvantage, a call to arms, a call to action, and some sort of time pressure, all designed to try and coerce you into making a poor decision quickly. Now, Spear-phishing is even more insidious, because spear-phishing is where a group of people or an individual will really take the time to get to know you. They are going to target you specifically. And that's where the name is actually quite a good analogy, because if you think of phishing in general terms, they will cast a net far and wide. They will send a generic email to millions of people in the hope that one or two people will fall foul of that and click. And they will then, through a sheer numbers game, get some advantage from that. But spear phishing is where someone decides, I'm going to target Alison, and I'm going to send Alison an email. Sorry, Alison. I'm going to send Alison an email that is designed to trick specifically her into doing something that I want her to do. So they will take their time. They will look at Alison's professional profile on her website. They will look at her social media profiles. They will try and identify who her friends are, who her colleagues are, and craft an email that makes sense to Alison that she might expect to receive, because that maximizes the chances of her falling victim to that one email. Now, it will probably make reference to your charity. It will probably make reference to groups or departments that they have found out that you work with. And it will probably make a request of you that is reasonable for you to expect. So if you are the treasurer of your charity, it might be a request to make payment. If you're responsible for social media, it might be a request to reset the social media accounts for your charity. And it may well pretend to come from your secretary or your chairman or another person within your charity group. It may include the use of other accounts that have been taken over. So what if someone hacks the account of your chairman, and the chairman of your charity or organisation appears to contact you? That's a very specific targeted email, and it's very, very difficult to actually identify that and prevent it from catching you out. The only way that you can really deal with something like that that's tailored for you is to follow up on that email before you take action. Pick up the phone and phone that person. Hello, Joe, it's James. I've just received an email from you asking me to move £500 into this account. I just want to confirm the details of the account before I actually put that forward. And you know what? If it is that person, the way you've put that forward, it doesn't sound like you don't trust them. You're just checking the details of that transaction. But if that's been a phishing email, the first thing he's going to tell you is, oh no, I don't know what you're talking about. And you've managed to catch that before you suffer some sort of loss. I'm going to move on now to the reason for having good social media kind of health and safety and sanity. This type of attack relies on them getting to know something about you. And the more they can find out about your personal life, the more they can find out about your professional life, the easier it is for them to craft an email that is specific and tailored to you. Now, having your position and your title on your website is probably fine, because you want people to know who you are. You want them to be able to contact you. Do you need your personal email address online? Probably not. You want to have a generic email address for your organisation that people can reach you at, that is not necessarily the same one that you use to conduct your daily business between other members of your charity. For the reasons I've discussed, spear phishing is very difficult to spot. And we've discussed some methods to try and mitigate against that. Looking at your online profiles then, what do you put online about yourself? What do you put online about your charity? What do you put on your website? These things are there for charities to reach the communities that they serve, and they are there for organisations to reach their customers and the people that they serve as well. So we do want to encourage the use of them, but it has to be measured and carefully controlled. As I've already said, don't put personal contact details online unless you really have to. Share them privately with only the people that need to know about them and only the people that you have a trusted business relationship with. If you do put an email address online, make it a generic one that comes into a group mailbox, and from there the relevant people can respond. And then after that relationship has been established, the personal email addresses or your work email addresses can be shared. Or even better, use a contact form on your website so that people can fill it in, and that comes into you in a more controlled way. Personal social media accounts. This is more aimed at charities and groups that perhaps rely on grants and funding. When we're applying for grants and funding, we often will put our charity's mission or our organisation's mission into applications for grants. And it's important to make sure that our personal social media and our charity's social media is sensible and actually reflects the values and the mission that we are putting down on that paperwork. Because the first thing that you'll find is when grants, bodies that are issuing grants get that application in, they're going to go and look at your website, they're going to go and look at your social media to see if you are who you claim to be and to see whether or not your activities online are in line with your personal values. And there's nothing worse than having a charity or an organisation with great personal values on their public pages, but then members of the charity's personal social media is public and it's perhaps inappropriate or not very professional. That can cause real damage to your organisation as well. So I know we're moving away from phishing just now, we're talking about wider resilience, but having really good control of your personal social media accounts is important too. Not only does it help against phishing, but it's also important when looking at your wider resilience and your professional appearance as an organisation. My last slide today is going to talk a little bit about COP and Think You Know. COP is the Child Exploitation and Online Protection arm of the National Crime Agency, and they focus on keeping children and young people safe from sexual harm, particularly online, and other forms of extortion. They've got an absolutely brilliant set of online resources. There are PowerPoints, there are online games, there are activities for all age groups that are going to teach children and young people good behaviours and good habits without getting too close to sensitive subjects. And it will give them the skills that they need to negotiate and navigate social networks and the online environment safely and securely. There is also resources available from COP and training for members of the children's workforce as well, which are really valuable. I'm not going to spend too much time on this today, but I do think that it is incredibly important. If you do have children and young people involved in your charities, please do have a look at this. And if you think they would benefit from it, please signpost it to them and send them in that direction. That is the website link for the COP materials. It's www.thinkyouKnow.co.uk. And again, as I said, you've got a variety of online activities and resource packs for all age groups and parents and carers, and also the children's workforce. So that brings me to the end of my little section. Thank you very, very much for coming along today. It's encouraging to see so many people. I know I'll get a chance to speak to you again later on, but I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Mike Smith, who will take you through some more top tips for keeping you safe online. So thank you very much.
Can I just jump in for just a second? I think we're looking like we're going to go over the hour now. We'll try and speed things up, but if there's questions that are coming in that you'd like answered, we'll do our best endeavours to answer them in the chat. Failing that, and we do go over, we would love for you all to stay on. Please don't disappear if you don't have to disappear, because we're quite happy to continue this and answer questions to the best of our ability. Sorry, Mike, on you go.
No, I saw your message come up in the chat about going over. I was just going to say that, so thank you. Yes, James, can we have the next slide, please? Oh, is that your details there? Yep. So welcome everyone. Yeah, just go through that. I'm just going to cover some practical points in relation to keeping yourselves safe online, and that's the sort of topics that we're going to go over. I will drill down, I won't drill down too far into them, but yeah, James, can we have the next one? I think that there's a huge crossover between how you do things at home and how you do things at work and or within your charity. And if you kind of get it at home, then you can take it into the workplace, and it really makes a lot more sense. So as I say, I'm going to be touching on just a few topics, a few items that should make you more resilient. And this isn't a case that you have to go out and just go and enable all these or buy new software or update things. There's probably a lot of these things I'm going to discuss that you already have. It may be bundled with software that you've already got. So it's maybe just a chance to look at some of the things that you use already, and you may have access to some of these. So can we have the next one? And the next one again, I'm going to touch on passwords now. And there's a whole host, if we just bring all these up, James, there's a whole host of things here. I know that this presentation is going to be available after. So I'm just going to touch on a few points here in relation to passwords. The days of having your pet's name and then a year, Buster away is long gone now. We're looking for the length of passwords to be 15 characters or longer. And there has been a shift over the last few years to pass phrases, whereby you take 3, 4, 5, the longer, the more words, the better, with the spaces involved as well, creating a robust password. So the length of the password, and as I said, possibly a passphrase. Give an example, fork, mirror, doctor there, but as I say, if you can pick as many words as you want, so that will create a far stronger password or passphrase. One thing as well, and James has just touched upon that, is the amount of personal information that we're putting online, especially in relation to social media. You've only got to sometimes stumble upon someone's social media account, and they've got every last job that they've been in, they've got their full schooling, they've got their middle name and a whole host of information. So avoiding putting private and personal information into a password is equally important as well. And lastly, I'm just going to touch on the last one there, the different accounts. One password for one site is the advice from ourselves and from the National Cyber Security Centre. Now, that would essentially be password overload in your brain, understand that, but you could consider using a password manager, and I'll touch on that after. James, can I have the next slide? So these time tests have been run on my one login there, and you'll see that these are the kind of passwords that over the last few years, as I said, we're kind of moving away from. A football team, one of your kids' name and their year of birth, possibly where you're from, and there's a pet's name there, and you'll see that the bottom one there is 0.01 seconds. So we are moving away from that, and we're moving on to passphrases. And James, if you show the next one, you'll see the kind of thing. The top one left there is one that's just been generated by antivirus software or by a password generator. It's just gobbledygook, but very robust. The one there's three random words there: print, pages, antique, and you'll see again a good time that would be to break that. The top right hand one is a combination of them both, and once again, so that is the sort of thing that we want you to consider when you are creating passwords. And as I said, we don't expect you to go out and just blast every password that you've got. But the next time you do go to your site, the next time you log into your Amazon account, or the next time you're logging into your email, say, hold on a second, I'm going to look at this. I might update my password. So yeah, you don't need to go and change everything overnight. That would be an absolute nightmare. But just consider that we are moving away from these less secure passwords nowadays. James, come to the next one. The next thing I was just wanting to highlight is two-factor authentication. It's shown up here as an app on your phone, but there is also the option for a text message. If you have been using poor passwords or your password has been compromised, if you set up a thing called a two-factor authentication, sometimes called multi-factor authentication, then this will provide just one extra level of security in relation to your email addresses or your account. So as I say, you set it up, there's an app called Authy. There's also Google Authenticator, and there's also the option within iOS as well within Apple. So, and the option also, as I say, to get a text message. If you have the option on an account that you've got set up, I know that on Gmail, etc., and on Amazon and lots of all the main vendors, you do have the option to set up two-factor authentication. So it should only take about 10-15 minutes to set it up, and does provide an extremely secure level of security for your account. So please, we will post more information in relation to this at the end, and make this available, so we can put some links into just some more information in that. So as I say, it is fairly simple to set up, but does provide a robust security for your accounts. Antivirus and anti-malware. We do try and promote the use of paid software. This usually provides additional levels of security for your systems, and also it usually allows you to have it on multiple pieces of equipment. So for example, you can put it on your phone, you can put it on laptops, and also on your desktop if you're using it. So consider it. The one other thing that it does do is it also usually there are also often additional pieces of security included as well. So it might have a password manager within it. So an option for saving all your passwords. It may have a two-factor authentication system. So there are often additional pieces of security with paid software, but please at least have some sort of software on them. The vendors that you see on the top there also have free ones as well. But as I say, possibly paid antivirus or anti-malware services do provide just that slightly bit more of security. James? Patching or keeping your computers up to date. Please have this set to auto update, or every now and again, even just check to make sure you have the most up-to-date level, the up-to-date software on your systems. I've got my phone set to auto update, and yet every time I do go and check it, there usually is an update that's sitting in there anyway, especially on the apps. So every now and again, just go in and check and just make sure that your computers are kept up to date. Please, as I say, set this to auto update, so it should all be taken care for you. But yeah, it should be simple enough just to go into your computer settings and just make sure that's set up. Or if you're having trouble finding where it is, usually ask a teenager. They'll have it. They'll find it for you in absolute seconds and show you where that is. But yeah, keeping your software up to date and keeping your operating systems up to date is extremely important. The next one. Now, I mentioned passwords earlier on. Passwords hopefully are as random as some of the ones that I showed you earlier on. Nowadays, even when you're just maybe buying something online, you'll get the option to create an account. There is also a lot of times nowadays options for additional security questions. And unlike the passwords, which should be fairly random, or especially if you've got a good one set up, additional security questions are a lot more personal. And if you take the spear-phishing example that James gave earlier on, there's a lot of private and personal information that can get given away in these additional security questions. So I've got down the bottom there in red, be creative, because essentially this is just a box within the website or within the social media platform that you're signing up for that needs to be filled in. So it may be the case, as long as you've written these down and you know what they are, or you stick to the same ones, as I say, you could be creative. This doesn't need to be your own personal and private information. So just take 10 minutes to have a think about what it is that you're putting in there. As I say, you'll see from, I mean, my dad signed up for a restaurant the other week there, and this is the sort of stuff that was asked, and it was just for a restaurant card. So there are more and more websites these days that are asking for what seems to be fairly ridiculously personal information. So yeah, just be a bit creative and have a think what you want to put in there. And lastly, I said this the other day when I was doing this presentation, maybe honest isn't the right word coming from Police Scotland, but stop putting so much information on there. So if I take just going online shopping, or in fact, I mentioned it earlier on social media, if you look down someone's Facebook profile, they have absolutely loads and loads of information there from every school that they've gone to. I think even more so this is important when it comes to young people. Young people will set up Instagram accounts, will set up Snapchat, will set up house party accounts, and it might be time just to take 5 and go, hold on a second, do I really want to put in my real details here? Especially if you have a fairly unique name, maybe just putting in some information that you use for a couple of years, almost like you can set up a different account in a couple of years. And same with email addresses as well. If you've got the email address mikesmith08@gmail.com, you've kind of given away your first name, your second name, and also it might be your kids, the year that they were born. So if you've got a family name or a pet name within the house that you use for kids, or just some fun names, maybe even use that in terms of email addresses, and just stop giving so much information away. If you are online for an e-commerce site, for example, maybe it's a case you're buying something, a lot of the time you get the option to check out as a guest. Now, if you're not going to be using that site regularly, then I would suggest that using that, well, in fact, not using it, but just be signing out as a guest is a good option. Then they've probably only got your name and your address, as opposed to a whole load of possibly even additional security questions that are asked upon there. So use the option to check out as a guest if you're not going to be using the site often. Have the next one, please. I think I was aware that we're running out of time now, because I certainly rattled through that at a ridiculous pace, but I'm aware that Kirstie's still got to come on as well. So I'll pass over to Kirstie here now.
Thanks, Mike. Hi, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. My name's Kirstie. I'm the Cyber Resilience Community Lead at the Scottish Business Resilience Centre. So I'm just going to crack on as well. So if you go to the next slide for me, James, that would be great. So cyber resilience, it's more about more than just protecting the technologies and the systems that we secure. It's about our preparedness to meet the cyber risk and how well equipped we are to withstand, defend against, manage, recover quickly, and learn from cyber incidents. And I'm going to talk you through some of the great resources and support available to help improve your charity's cyber resilience and what to do if you fall victim to a cyber attack. And the purpose of this sort of thing is to go through the various stages here. So I'm going to talk you through some of the advice and guidance that's available, how to prepare for a cyber incident, what to do if you suffer an attack, and who you should report it to. So if you go to the next slide for me, thanks. So the National Cyber Security Centre are the UK's authoritative source for all things cybersecurity. They are part of GCHQ, and it's important to get the information on cybersecurity from these trusted sources of advice. And the National Cyber Security Centre, or NCSE for short, have produced various tools and guidance to help improve your charity's resilience, and that will reduce the likelihood that you will become a victim of a cyber crime, or helping you better handle a cyber attack. And getting the cyber basics right is relatively simple, and Mike spoke through some of them quite excellently there. And if you put those simple steps in place, you're going to eliminate up to 80% of any risk from a non-targeted internet-borne threats. So the NCSC have this small charity guide on cybersecurity, and that helps you take through 5 topics that are covered, and it's easy to understand. Some of them are free, or they cost very little to implement. If you hit the next bit for me, James, you'll see this infographic that will pop up. That'll help summarise some of those steps that you should have a look at. And the National Cyber Security Centre produce various infographics like the one displayed, and that helps sum up the guidance that they produce in a nice, easy PDF. So you can download this, so you can print it off and keep it as a handy reminder. And they've got various topics on lots and lots of guidance, from top tips to keep your staff secure. There's a free 30-minute e-learning package. There's guidance to protect your devices from malware and viruses. And there's guidance on home working and using video conferencing tools securely, which is a thing that a lot of us are doing just now. So I would definitely advise you to go onto the National Cyber Security Centre's website and have a look at some of the guidance there. And next slide, please. So it's essential that organisations have a clearly defined plan to prevent, detect, respond and recover from cyber attacks, and particularly the most common attacks. And it's important to test your organisation's incident response plans in the same way that you would test your health and safety or your fire drills. Now, Exercise in a Box is an online tool which was developed by NCSE to help organisations find out how resilient you are to a cyber attack and how to help you practice your response. The service is text-based exercises based on the main cyber threats, and it has probing questions attached to each scenario to get you thinking about your own organisation's security procedures. So it helps you find out how resilient your organisation is and where opportunities for improvement are. It helps you understand some of the risks that your organisation is currently exposed to and what you can do to combat them. Now, this tool provides everything that you need for setting up, planning, delivery and review all in one place. And the good thing is it's totally free and you don't need to be an expert to use it. Organisations can do this in their own time in a safe environment and as many times as you want. Next slide, please. So at SBRC, we're helping to promote Exercise in a Box, and we are conducting practical workshops where we will facilitate one of the sessions. So we're offering a 90-minute free workshop where we will walk you through one of the scenarios in Exercise in a Box. And at the moment, we're focusing on key areas that we see are particularly key to look at for Scottish organisations. So the two scenarios that we focus on are working from home. So looking at the additional security risks that home working and remote working can bring, and phishing attacks leading to a ransomware infection. So how would you respond in your organisation to a phishing attack, and how well can you still operate if you get infected by ransomware? So in the session, in these workshops that we run, you're paired with one of our ethical hackers. So they take you through and facilitate the set of questions designed to recreate a certain scenario. And this means that you have someone on hand who will be able to help you understand if what you're doing is enough or what else you could potentially think about implementing. Each session, we sometimes host around 7 companies, sometimes more, where you will discuss each of the scenarios within your own team. And we normally recommend about 5 people from your organisation join, and ideally not everybody from the same department, because we see the best results and the best discussions going forward when we get people from marketing, admin, sales, senior management, IT. Because IT, well, they might know some of the levels of security. You might not even have an IT person within your organisation. So it's really kind of interesting to find out what people know and where they stand. And our sessions are available on Zoom and on Teams. And there's a little quiz on the SBRC website that will help you know if exercise in a box is suitable for your organisation to attend. So there's more information about this on our website, and you can book for any upcoming sessions that we have. So we normally run these 2 times a week at the moment, so definitely keep an eye out for that. And once you complete the session, you will leave feeling comforted, knowing that you have done everything that you can to protect your organisation, or you will leave with a to-do list to help strengthen it and prepare your organisation. Next slide, please. So over the last year, many organisations have dealt with a sudden increased dependency on this technology to support this remote working and placing unexpected demands on our cyber defences. And this has resulted in a corresponding rise in cyber incidences, either through deliberately targeted by cyber criminals or accidental events with unintended consequences. Now, we recognise that smaller organisations and charities are often unclear about what to do or who to turn to if faced with a cyber incident. Now, SBRC, Police Scotland and Scottish Government have teamed up to provide the SMEs and the third sector within Scotland with a free and confidential cyber incident response helpline. This helpline will help organisations confirm that they've been a victim of a cyber attack. And if so, we will provide expert guidance to get you back to secure operations. The service is free advice, guidance, and a triage of your cyber incident. And we are supported with a cadre of cyber incident response companies across Scotland. I couldn't say that there. Now, the helpline is run by SBRC, and we have Mark Cunningham-Dickey, who is our cyber incident response lead, managing the calls to this service. Now, we can help you verify any cyber incidents, identify any appropriate reporting that you should be doing, and put you into contact with companies across Scotland that can help you resolve and recover from your cyber incidents, even if there's any on-site experts that's required for that. The service is 9 till 5, Monday to Friday, and we help with various different cyber incidents from what we were talking about there: phishing, malware, ransomware, business email compromise, insider threat, data loss, and many, many more. And this helpline, we've recently helped some small organisations with regards to, we had a Facebook scam page that was set up with this organisation's logo, who had contacted their recent contacts and pointed them to fake competitions. So we were able to help manage that situation. There's another incident that where a small company's email domain was being used to try and trick other companies and public sector organisations by sending out these scam emails. And what happened there was that organisations, had increased demand on their own email server, and their mailbox was filling up. So our helpline was able to help manage in that situation as well. So these might be ones that you might come across in your organisation. But the sooner that you can call or detect or suspect a cyber incident, the greater chances that you have for recovery and damage mitigation. And we're here to support you at any stage and every stage of your cyber incident, no matter how big or small it is. Do share this number with anybody else that works in a smaller organisation or a charity. It might not help them today, but it's always good to know who to turn to if you do get in that tricky situation. And we do encourage reporting to Police Scotland by calling 101 and 999 if there's a threat to life. But the control of all that communication relies with you as a victim, but we can help. And a history shows that, if you're more open about having suffered a cyber incident, you can recover better and quicker, not just technically, but with trust and reputation. Now, the good thing is you don't need to wait to suffer a cyber incident to call this number. You can get lots of great advice about how to secure your IT security a little bit more. Or if you need any help or advice about protecting your organisation from a cyber incident, you can give Mark a call. And there's also an email address, cyberincident@sbrcentre.co.uk, if you've got questions that you want to ask as well. Yes, next slide, please. So we cannot overemphasize the importance of reporting to reduce the potential harm caused by cyber incidents. Every organisation will be different, but it might be whoever it is in your team. If it's a line manager or an IT person, these are usually the best places to start within your organisation. But the sooner that you report, the quicker it can be resolved and the less damage that it will cause. And depending on the nature of the attack, you may be required to report certain incidents to other people as well. So like regulators or the Information Commissioner's Office or the police, or indeed a customer database that you have. So you want to report to Police Scotland if there's any criminal activity there. So by calling 101. This may be a requirement of any insurance policy that you have as well. It can help by reporting to Police Scotland, you will be helping to identify any trends affecting charities and businesses, which the police can then take action to do against. So you're doing your kind of duty there to help the greater good. You want to report any to Information Commissioner's Office within 72 hours if you suspect a personal data breach that may have impacted the rights and freedoms of individuals within your organisation. And other regulators as well. So some charities may be subject to funding from regulators depending on the sort of field or requirements that they have. You may have to report the incident to them as well. So it's worth checking any material on that you have. Especially from your grant funders too. But yeah, lots of people there that you should be reporting to if you deal with an incident. And the next slide, please. So in response to the growing need for clarity around cybersecurity, 10 strategic organisations across Scotland, including Scottish Council Voluntary Office, Police Scotland and SBRC and more, have formed a Cyber Scotland partnership, and we have the National Cyber Security Centre joining us as our technical advisor to this group. And this, as part of this partnership, one of our first moves was to create a new one-stop shop for cybersecurity, a new website for us all to put advice and guidance on. And it's called the cyberscotland.com. This is a single online resource for individuals and organisations looking for information and support across a range of cybersecurity and resilience issues. And it ensures that everybody can access the right information from the right source. So it includes information on actual skills development as well. So for anybody looking to start a new career in cybersecurity, that's another good place to go. But all of the information that I've shared in my slides today, along with, I think, with what everybody else has said, is all linked within this website. So I would definitely encourage you to take a look and you will see all of the partners' resources that we have spoken about today in this session. That brings me to the end of my presentation here. So thank you for hanging around on a Friday afternoon, and I will pass back to Alison. Thank you.
Brilliant. That was great, guys. Thank you very, very much. Audience, I'm really, really sorry. I'm aware that we've gone and overstayed our welcome, possibly. We probably don't have a lot of time for questions. Is there any really urgent ones, or can I give you James's email address and he can maybe field them for you after this event?
There was a lot of questions that Kirstie answered as we went. Those, thank you so much for that, Kirstie. So I think most of them are answered. But as Alison says, you will all get James's email. It'll be in the presentation when we email it out. So you can send questions to James afterwards if you need to.
Brilliant. Okay. I think we'll just close up now because the time is cracking on. I want to say thank you to you all for coming. It's Friday afternoon. It was quite a long session. I hope you got something, at least one or two things out of it. I know I did, actually. Every time I listen to somebody else present, I still pick up something new, which is wonderful. So thank you to James, Mike and Kirstie. I think your presentations were brilliant. And yeah,